Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today, I'm diving deep into an absolutely fascinating book, Gang Leader for a Day, A Rogue Sociologist Takes to the Streets by Sudhir Venkatesh. Buckle up, because this isn't your average sociology textbook. This is an inside look at Chicago's housing projects, gangs, survival, and honestly, what makes people tick when the system isn't working for them. So, let's set the scene. It's the late 1980s. Sudhir Venkatesh is a first-year graduate student at the University of Chicago. He wants to research poverty and urban life for his sociology degree. Instead of taking the usual survey approach, he actually steps into the world he wants to study, which, spoiler, is both risky and wildly illuminating. How does this adventure kick off? Well, Venkatesh starts with a questionnaire, which he takes to the Robert Taylor Homes, one of Chicago's most notorious housing projects. Picture this. He's a young Indian American, a bit naive, walks up to strangers asking, "How does it feel to be poor and black?" No surprise, he gets a lot of hostile reactions. The residents, understandably, find him out of touch. Some even take him hostage for a day, suspecting he's with a rival gang or the police. During this ordeal, Venkatesh meets JT, a charismatic and ambitious leader of the Black Kings, a gang that runs several buildings in the projects. Now, this is the turning point. Rather than forcing him out, JT is curious and sort of amused by Venkatesh's academic intentions. This curious grad student wants to understand their world. "Fine," says JT, but he has to see it for himself. Thus begins Sudhir's deep dive into the community, spending the next several years shadowing JT, observing, questioning, and participating. The title, Gang Leader for a Day, comes from a unique moment in the book when JT actually lets Sudhir run the gang's operations for a day, a role-play experiment that reveals all kinds of unexpected challenges. Now, you might be asking, why did Sudhir want to take this risky approach? Why not just interview people in a safe, controlled environment? Well, Sudhir believed, and frankly proved, that the reality of life in these projects is infinitely more complex than any survey or statistics could possibly capture. He wanted to understand the informal economies, power dynamics, and survival strategies in a community often misunderstood or stereotyped from a distance. Let's talk about some key themes and moments. First, the organization and economics of gang life. One of the most surprising things Venkatesh discovers is how organized the Black Kings are. JT runs his territory almost like a corporation. There are hierarchies, rules, performance metrics, even business meetings. The gang isn't just about violence. It's about managing drug sales, mediating disputes, providing security, and in a way, serving as a kind of informal government for the residents. They fill the void left by the failure of formal institutions: police, welfare agencies, housing authorities. Sudhir learns about the dues gang members pay, the commissions collected on various enterprises, and the risks and rewards of the gang economy. Astonishingly, even low-level gang members barely make above minimum wage when you do the math. Only the top earners like JT get a real cut of the profits. This finding later becomes famous through another book, Freakonomics, co-authored by one of Venkatesh's professors, Stephen Levitt. Beyond economics, Sudhir explores the complicated relationship between the gang and the surrounding community. Residents resent the violence and the danger, but also rely on the gang for protection, resolving disputes, and sometimes even support during tough times, a kind of shadow welfare system. Women in the community exhibit resilience and ingenuity, operating informal businesses like daycare, hair salons, or food selling, all under the shadow and sometimes with the blessing of the gang. One of the most nuanced aspects Sudhir captures is how everyone is making difficult choices in a severely constrained environment. The outsiders might label the residents as criminals or helpless, but up close every action is shaped by limited options and survival. Sudhir also delves into his own transformation as an observer. He grapples with ethical dilemmas. Is he exploiting his subjects for academic gain? Does his presence alter the reality he's trying to study? Is he complicit in illegal activity when he witnesses it, or when he plays along as gang leader for a day? There's this constant tension. He wants to be objective, but he can't help but feel empathy, even friendship, for people like JT and others he meets. That Gang Leader for a Day episode makes these dilemmas vivid. JT instructs Sudhir on bargaining with tenants, settling disputes, keeping money flowing in, and facing the ever-present threat of rivals or the law. Sudhir quickly realizes that leading a gang requires negotiation skills, business sense, and nerves of steel. It's not as simple as brandishing power. It's about navigating fragile community relationships and conflicting interests. But JT isn't a stereotype of a gangster. He's college-educated, strategic, and he genuinely cares about his family and his community, even as he's complicit in a violent, illegal enterprise. That tension between morality and survival is central to the book. Venkatesh doesn't shy away from the harsh realities either. There's real violence and tragedy. He witnesses evictions, drug overdoses, police brutality, and the chronic stress residents live under. But he also captures daily moments of humor, generosity, and perseverance. The book also lifts the curtain on the failures of outside institutions. Sudhir tries to connect with local administrators, social workers, and police officers. He finds that for many, working in the projects is about maintaining order, papering over problems, or simply collecting a paycheck until the next assignment. In contrast, the people who live there, gangsters, tenants, makeshift entrepreneurs, are far more invested in the community's actual survival, for better or worse. One striking scene comes when a building's elevator breaks and the official repair crew does nothing. Instead, the gang hires someone to fix it. A perfect example of the informal solutions that arise where formal systems have failed. Throughout the book, Sudhir constantly reflects on his position. He's an outsider with certain privileges, but the more he learns, the more he sees how arbitrary the boundaries are between the mainstream world and the margins. He also sees how easy it is to demonize a community without ever understanding their reality. If we zoom out, Gang Leader for a Day is more than a memoir. It's a meditation on how race, poverty, policy, and power intersect in American cities. It's about grit, resourcefulness, and the human instinct to build order, connection, and dignity, even when the deck is stacked against you. So what can we learn from this book? First and foremost, that real understanding requires presence. Venkatesh's commitment to immersing himself in the community, rather than relying on statistics alone, reveals hidden realities and humanizes the people living at society's margins. His story is a challenge to all of us, to look beneath the labels, question assumptions, and recognize the complexity of people's lives. As for Sudhir himself, his research not only changed the way sociologists study poverty and crime, but also sparked conversations nationwide about public policy, race, and inequality. The book ends with Venkatesh reflecting on the personal impact of his journey, the friends he made, the limits he came up against, and the complicated truths he uncovered. And that's Gang Leader for a Day in a very large nutshell. Highly recommended if you want an unflinching, eye-opening portrait of urban life from the inside out. Thanks for listening, and if you've read the book or have thoughts, let me know. Until next time, stay curious.